And that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News, and our top story tonight. A raft of tax cuts and benefits increases aimed at making 27 million people better off was announced by the Chancellor today. In the biggest change outlined in his autumn statement, Jeremy Hunt said national insurance will be cut from 12 to 10%. The triple lock on pensions will be kept, taking the state pension up by 8.5% to more than £220 a week, and taxes on alcohol will be frozen until August next year, meaning no increases in duty on beer, cider, wines or spirits. In other news today, the mother of a 28-year-old woman shot dead in Liverpool has labelled her daughter's killers monsters, as they were jailed for life today for the murder. Ashley Dale was murdered when James Witham forced his way into her home and opened fire with a machine gun. He and 3 other men were handed life sentences with minimum terms to serve of between 41 and 47 years. And the hometown of 4 teenage boys who died in North Wales cancelled tonight's Christmas lights switch on out of respect for the families involved. Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Will Fitchett and Hugo Morris were on a camping trip to the Snowdonia region, but their bodies were recovered yesterday after a car was found overturned and partially submerged in water. North Wales Police says it appears to have been a tragic accident. A man and a woman in their 30s have died after a migrant boat capsized off the French coast this evening. French and British maritime agencies were called to reports of a boat in difficulties around 8 miles off the coast of Boulogne at around 5 o'clock. Around 60 people were crammed on board the small boat which had begun sinking. Some other migrants were taken to Dungeness in Kent. Israel's National Security Advisor says no hostages will be released before Friday. That's after an agreed 4-day pause in fighting starting tomorrow morning. Benjamin Netanyahu earlier said humanitarian workers from the Red Cross would be allowed to visit all remaining hostages in captivity in Gaza. 50 will be freed by the terror group Hamas in exchange for 150 Palestinians who are held in Israeli prisons. And here in the UK, the new Foreign Secretary David Cameron said the truce was a crucial step towards providing humanitarian relief to Gazans. And lastly, the President of South Korea has attended a banquet at the Guildhall in London tonight, along with the Lord Mayor of the City of London. And a warning for television viewers, it does contain some flashing images. The President and First Lady were joined by the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. And earlier, the Prime Minister and his wife welcomed them to number 10 Downing Street. Yoon Suk-yeol and Rishi Sunak signed a new long-term agreement covering defence and technology, a deal covering improved military cooperation between the UK and South Korea, focused on countering smuggling in the East China Sea. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle, and joining me to gently caress Thursday's newspapers is ladies' man Lewis Schaefer and his wingman Nick Dixon. I think I've got that the right way round, haven't I?
How am I the wingman?
Well, you seem like you are, the kind of supportive jock kind of who hangs around and...
Oh, he's my wingman.
I think so.
Lewis didn't even know what that term meant the other day.
Really?
Because we tried to approach Michael Knowles and he was my wingman, or I was his wingman.
Right.
Yes.
We're talking to a straight man.
Yeah, a wingman is the one who sort of butters up the desired object.
I was thinking maybe I like legs or the breast. I was more of a whole chicken man. That is just a wing. When he said a wing...
I was worried where you were going there for a minute, but since you clarified, it's fine. Let's have a look, before we crack on, with the front pages for Thursday. The Daily Mail is leading with, I hope it's just the start. That's a story about the budget, which we're going to get to in a moment. The Telegraph has biggest tax cuts since the 1980s. You're going to start sensing a theme here. The Sun, New Year's, wahey. The iNews has tax-burdened hit record high despite 2p cut for millions. And Guardian has Hunt reveals £20 billion in tax cuts as Tories move on to election footing. The Daily Star really bucking the trend here. They go with Stevie Wonder took me joyriding. That's a story about the Eurythmics. Those were your front pages. Right, we're going to kick off with Thursday's Daily Mail. Lewis, what have you got?
We've got the biggest tax cut since the 1980s, and this is the budget that the Chancellor... I don't understand how politics in this country works.
Well, I'm glad we came to you first.
You're on the right show.
Well, you can explain it to me. You have the head of the government, who's Rishi Sunak, and then you got this other guy who's in charge of the money.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yes, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt. We haven't heard a lot about him because the other people have been messing things up.
They have. Well, since Nick's here, and Nick is rather an expert on the budget, why don't you tell us what it's all about?
I can do, yeah. I mean, the main things are the national insurance cut from 12% to 10%. So you'll save £450 a year if you're earning 35k. It doesn't really affect Lewis, but some people it will. And you've got...
Would you keep my business
I'm sorry. You showed me a form before that bank statement before we went on air, and it's just
he didn't mention the figures, Lewis, so I think it's fine. He was very discreet.
But some people have pointed out for every £1 you gain in national insurance, it's offset by £4 we'll lose on income tax thresholds, which have been frozen to 2028, which is called fiscal drag. 4 million more people will be dragged into paying income tax, and 3 million more people will be dragged into the higher rate of tax. Yes. So,
but of course, this isn't about what's good.
I sound like Liam Halligan. I was all just memorised.
I mean, it was very impressive, Nick.
I've got more.
But really, this isn't altruistic. This isn't about helping individual people and families in their struggling circumstances. It is largely about developing growth. And the idea here is, according to the Chancellor, his view is that a cut in national insurance of this kind will have a bigger impact on growth than an income tax cut. Is he right?
Well, now you've just gone beyond my economic pay grade. When I said those stats, I sounded quite good. I mean, I've got no idea on that.
Well, I mean, it's always going to be a bit of a gamble.
Quasi-Quaton, isn't that what that guy was involved in?
Yeah.
Didn't they do this a year ago or whatever?
Not to the extent. I mean, what Quasi-Quaton...
But weren't they heading in that direction? They were pounded, and they were forced out of office, and...
Well, they were pounded, Lewis, because the markets were spooked, which is the phrase they like to use.
Yeah, whereas Hunt's been sort of warning. But then Hunt said they weren't going to do these tax cuts. They're only doing them now because they're desperate about the election, which we'll get into later. But by the way, Liam actually said earlier today on GB, it's a 5 or 6p increase to the basic rate of income tax in real terms. Yes. So that's the big criticism. Maybe we'll get on to that. And there's more stuff. There's minimum wage, there's a triple lock, there's so many things to talk about.
Well, let's just quickly talk about the minimum wage rise. OK, so this is an example of... And there's a rise in benefits. So this is an example of how they are ostensibly helping the weakest in society, the most vulnerable in society. It doesn't strike me as a particularly traditionally Tory approach.
And it's a big rise. Minimum wage has gone up from 10.42 to 11.44.
Yes.
And my problem with minimum wage is always, even in my layman understanding, is that it penalises businesses and they can't afford to hire people, and that would be my worry.
OK, but on the other hand, you know, earning, what is it, £10.40 something an hour, it's difficult to live on that, you know, and I think it is important that... But, no, it is.
I remember getting paid £3 something at Virgin Megastore in Newcastle.
I got even less than that as a paperboy, right? So I know what it's like.
But it isn't the business. It isn't the business of the government to find what is a living wage. We don't know what a living wage is. Each person is a different...
But it was arbitrarily come up with as well, this number.
What do you think of Nick's view that, you know, although obviously I've made the case that people on minimum wage do need to be able to sustain their existence, Nick's saying that this is actually bad for employers because they can't, you know, their costs go up.
I agree with that, and I would have to say that I'm against the minimum wage. But on the other side, if you don't let the minimum wage go up, right? If you don't not go up, you don't force it on the people, then what happens is the government then feels the necessity to give the benefits to those people, whatever that's called, where they actually take somebody who's not making much money and helps out Amazon by sending money to that person. What
0 hours contracts? Are you talking about?
Not 0 hours contract.
I've zoned out. Sorry.
I zoned out.
Outsourcing. Well, say it again.
No, don't say it again. I think we've got the gist.
No. It's a very important concept, which is there are people who are being paid a low amount of money, which is below a certain amount of money, and then the government says, okay, instead of saying you should stop working entirely, we will top you up.
We'll top you up, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And who does that benefit except the
people being topped up, presumably.
The largest companies, because they don't have to pay that.
Oh, there's that, yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we're going to move on to another story about the budget. Obviously, all of the front covers are covering the budget, but in different ways. The Mail seems sort of positive, slightly dubious, perhaps. The Mirror is full cynical, I think. What are the Mirror doing, Nick?
Yeah, the Mirror go, do they take us all for fools? And as you say, it's more anti-budget, but it's not that dissimilar to the things people were saying on GB News throughout the day. So it's, you know, no one can say we're partisan to the Tories there, but it's, they're saying the NI cut, but tax surges takes more, which is exactly what I said.
Yeah.
Growth slows and inflation stays high. More austerity to fund election bribes, which obviously...
But inflation staying high. I mean, that is the tricky thing to either regulate or to predict, ultimately. According to this, it's saying that the Office for Budget Responsibility is saying that inflation is going to fall to 2.8% by the end of next year, with a target of 2% by 2025. And it was 11% October last year, so it's going in the right direction. But it's very, very difficult to kind of... I mean, what can they do? You know, these are predictions. These are not guarantees.
Yeah, I don't...
But at the end of the... When the chickens all get plucked, they're spending almost 38% of GDP on taxes.
Yes.
And that's very labor of them. And what is this, World War II, that so much money is being spent on taxes? And I think what they're doing is they're giving a little bit, this is a typical thing, they're giving a little bit of it back.
Right. I think we still do have the highest tax burden since World War II, so I think so. So I think you're right. By the way, Lewis accidentally said one other smart thing before when he said the division between the PM and the Chancellor.
Yes.
I keep going on about this Dominic Cummings interview, but he did say something really interesting. He said when he came in, Cummings, into the number 10, there was no communication on economic forecast and data between number 10 and number 11, and they had to install that. And the second that Dominic Cummings left, they got rid of it again. So they keep secrets from each other, which does seem absolutely mental.
That is a bad idea, particularly since they live next door to each other.
Yeah.
Neighbours should get on. Just before we finish on this, what do you guys think of this work experience placement idea, that if people are out of work for 18 months, they have to then be placed in work experience? Do you think that's a fair kind of... otherwise, they don't get the benefits.
Well, I think I don't know what's in place, but I know in every country, in every system, they don't let people take benefits
You're sort
forever.
of against welfare, aren't you?
I am, which is ironic, considering I am one of the biggest.
OK, well, let's move on to the front cover of The Guardian now. They do cover the budget, but they also have another big story, Lewis. What's this?
Well, the big story is for a few minutes we've forgotten about the big story, is that the Israel-Hamas war world awaits start of a 4-day truce and hostage release. And what's happening is that the Israelis, to get back 50 hostages of the 250 hostages, they're giving up 150 prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, and they're going to have a 4-day truce, which is going to let this is.
And this starts tomorrow morning, right? At 8 a.m., I believe.
It does, but they say no hostages are going to be released by Friday, according to Netanyahu.
It is quite astonishing, though, those figures. I mean, you're saying they're releasing 150 Palestinian prisoners for 50 hostages, innocent civilians. We should add. There's not a sort of equivalence to the kind of people that are being released, but. When you look at that, if you take what was it? It was about 5 years ago when one IDF soldier was released
for 1,000
Palestinians. Doesn't this show weakness when it comes to Hamas?
Here's my opinion. I am not those people. Those are my people, but I am not those people. And they have been. And my personal feeling is there's an old joke, Andrew.
Go on.
2 Jews facing the firing squad. Oh, this old school joke. 2 Jews facing this firing squad, and they're about to be shot to death. And one says, "Wait a second, where's my last cigarette? Where's our last cigarette? We get a last cigarette." And the other Jew elbows him and said, "Shh, don't make trouble."
It's one of those.
It's an old
Jewish joke.
And that
the kind of Ivor Dembina take.
And yes, I know old Jews tell. Forget about Ivor Dembina. and that's what this story is. On one hand, you have the new Israel, which is saying, "Where's my last cigarette?" And that's what this is all about.
Well, really, it's about getting these innocent people back alive. I mean,
it isn't.
Well, let me ask you, Nick, though, regarding this. I mean. You know, obviously everyone feels for those people, and we desperately want them to be released. Some people are concerned that with this pause, it gives Hamas the opportunity to regroup, to monitor the movement of the IDF, where the IDF are, where they're going to do next. In other words, the next stage of the ground offensive is going to be much, much harder as a result of the 4 days, which could lead to further loss of life. It's almost one of those impossible choices to make, isn't it?
Yeah, I hadn't even heard that. That is horrific. That's very tricky. And also, it seems to be it's going to be even slower, because for every 10 additional hostages released, there'll be an extra day's pause in the fighting.
It's been suggested.
If that deal goes through.
It's just a horrible situation.
No, do you know what? You're wrong, because while getting the hostages back are important, I think also they might think, well, we don't want this stuff to happen again.
Well, no, that's absolutely right. In fact, one of the 1,000 Palestinians who were released before, you mentioned, ended up being one of the main orchestrators of the October 7th attack. So you don't... Exactly. It's impossible to know. Anyway, those are the front pages. Come back in a moment for herd immunity, whale death, and Orkney migration centres. You want to know more? I bet you do. See you in a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle. I'm joined by gigolo Lewis Schaefer and unemployed gigolo Nick Dixon. Let's begin with Thursday's Mirror. Lewis, about the general election.
Gigolos get paid. I'm the one who does the paying.
We pay you handsomely,
I
Lewis.
know, but I'm saying you pay... Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop
complaining, get on with the story.
Jeremy Hunt dropped sneaky hint in autumn statement, which is what we discussed in the first place. That's the budget thing.
Yes.
When the next general election will be.
What is his sneaky hint? What's he suggesting?
He's suggesting it's either going to be it's going to be May or November.
Right. Okay. Well, that's speculation on other people's part. He didn't say it explicitly.
Oh, I don't know what the cheeky hit was.
So that's what they're sort of suggesting. But what do you make of this, Nick? Is this important?
What's sneaky?
Well, the general election is important, but is it important that we're speculating about when it's going to be? Is the timing of the general election important?
Yeah, because most people are saying it's going to be a long one, it's going to be autumn, but now May is possible because he's introduced this thing. The changes in national insurance coming from January 6th, which mean the benefits, maybe that thing about feeling the benefit, like leaving your coat off till you go outside, you say you won't feel the benefit.
Yes.
He wants people to feel the benefit by May, to give them the option to go early.
Do you think
they're going to get trounced either way, if that's what you're asking?
Well, that's what I think, but... Do you think that's why this particular autumn statement contains so many details about targeting and helping those who are less fortunate? It's a kind of vote winner.
It's a vote winner, yeah, but it also, though, might be the reason he's holding back the changes in threshold. Everyone's saying, well, why don't you change the threshold? Because there's fiscal drag. Maybe he's keeping that back for the actual election. That's the real, vote winner. None of it's going to work anyway.
Well, like you say, they're trounced. I mean, I just don't say... Look, I say that I always predict these things wrong. I predicted Trump wrong, Brexit wrong.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I'm going to stick my neck out anyway and say they've got no chance.
No, they have no chance because money isn't the big issue. It is a big issue. There's inflation, and they know it's already been in their mind. I think it's been adjusted for the people's minds. The big issue is number one, there's been no apology for the COVID mess. There's been no apology for mass migration and the ships. There's no apology for the lawlessness under the Tory administration.
People don't want an apology. They want it fixed.
Lewis,
you have to start with an apology.
You're wrong and right. I mean, immigration does poll number 3 in the list of issues all the time. That's the top 3 issues.
Yeah.
But cost of living, money does matter because cost of living is also one of the top 3.
Of course.
And that's
but do you think voters are going to reward the Tories for these measures now taken? Too little, too late, springs to mind.
Maybe some, if they really are feeling the difference, and if Labour continue to say things they actually believe,
no, but
that could help.
Isn't there also just a sense of fatigue? Like, there's just fatigue. Like, people are thinking it's time for a change. And I think a Labour government, however horrendous that might be in all sorts of ways, not least for women's rights and gay rights, but I do think it might actually stimulate the Tories because suddenly they're in the shadow cabinet. They're on the back foot. They're going to have to up their game. They might actually start being conservative again.
Yeah, or you could say... Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's the only argument for it. My Starmer destroys the country for 5 years, and then Farage 2029. That's the only positive.
But people said that in 1933 in Germany. They said, you know what, let's give Hitler a little bit, and then they'll realise.
Andrew is in many ways a Nazi apologist.
What a statement. Thankfully, I know that Nick is joking, so I don't have to sue him. We're going to move on to The Guardian now, Nick. What's this one about? This is herd immunity.
Yeah, herd immunity was never UK policy, Chris Whitty tells COVID Inquiry, and it's the so-called COVID Inquiry whose main job seems to just be to repeatedly shore up the pro-lockdown position, and this is a sort of another example. He's reassuring people, oh, no, we were never going to do herd immunity. He was saying herd immunity was more of a description of how, and the natural course of a pandemic, how it may go.
I remember people talking about it at the time. I mean, it wasn't policy, but they were saying things like, it will inevitably happen.
Yeah, but his point is they shouldn't have been, because mainly it was people who, at best, half understood the issues, obviously meaning Boris, but also meaning Hancock, because Boris came out and said, there was this idea, maybe we could take it on the chin, all those kind of things.
Yes.
People were coming out, and the people got it in their heads. The media maybe deliberately spun this, that the policy was to let it rip and have this herd immunity policy.
But that wasn't the case.
No, Whitty's saying it was never a policy, it was just, some people thought this is how it may go, and he was trying to text Boris and Hancock saying, don't talk about this publicly. But the annoying thing about it is, as I've said, all it does is go back to this, we need to, it just shores up that pro-lockdown narrative again, which is what's annoying about it. Because herd immunity, also it says here, using herd immunity as a policy was also predicated on post-infection immunity being permanent, which I don't really agree with. I thought herd immunity, maybe I'm wrong, was more to do with when you get it, the severity, and therefore eventually transmission stops. It wasn't based on immunity being permanent.
No, my understanding was that herd immunity is the way that most pandemics of this kind go anyway, and that's why they were talking about it at the time.
Yeah, the way everything goes. This guy, Chris Whitty, is evil. And is
I'm going to come back with some balance there, I think. Since you invoked a theological term, Lewis, I don't think...
Am I not allowed to?
Content. We don't think that really.
Well, I mean, look, you can make that judgment.
I'm just trying to stop you getting sued. I heard you can get sued.
Well, my argument would be
Could I get sued by calling the guy evil?
Well, what I would say... No, you can't. No.
What could I get...
Lewis, can I ask you, though, seriously?
Oh, good.
Your tendency to dismiss those who you disagree with as evil, why not say he's probably a very good man who got it wrong? Why not go down that route? That, I think, is a more persuasive approach.
Because, number one is, the more persuasive I am, the more a threat to the society that I will become, and the more Ofcom will get on my case.
This sounds like the speech of a supervillain.
Can I just say, Lewis is a very good man who just got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
not evil.
So I think Lewis actually is evil. Evil and slightly deranged.
Okay. I'll say something else. The worst things about this country is the tendency to form a committee, an inquiry, and giving it to one guy, and let that one guy decide what information is going to come out. That's the worst.
This country that's given you everything.
Everything. We have invited you. This is your home.
Yes.
We have welcomed you with open arms. We've let you do your stand-up.
We didn't realise what you were like.
Yeah.
But now you're here.
And you know what?
I didn't deport you.
I think we're even. I didn't realise what you guys were like.
You actually came over and stole our jobs and women. That's what you do.
You imposed your Yankee ways.
Or she could have stolen me.
Yeah, well, maybe that happened.
This guy, Chris Whitty, if you look at him, he's a pasty, bloated...
No, this is ad hominem.
Of course he's pasty.
Yes.
Ad hominem
Why
nonsense.
can't I say that?
Okay, well, in which case I can say he's a beautiful, a towering Adonis of a man.
Well...
There we go.
And you know what? You win.
I win, again, as always. Thursday's Telegraph now. Lewis, tell us about the Great Green War of 2023.
Speaking of Chris Whitty, Wales...
He's not Welsh, is he?
Wales.
He's referring to the bloating aspect.
The bloating.
Well, I know, I was trying to help him.
Sorry, very funny. I can't handle a joke come back.
No, I'm too witty for you.
You really are, and people don't like that.
No, I know they don't. They resent me for it. I know.
They prefer someone who's
calendars, gout.
Yeah, gout.
Go on, Lewis.
Offshore wind farms, dead whales, and the row that started a green-on-green civil war. Basically, they're saying, this is what they're saying. They're saying that wind farms are blamed for killing whales.
This is off Cornwall. Apparently, there's been a lot of whales.
Even though there is no wind farms there are dead wind farms, and it's just bringing up a whole mess of things. They're saying that the noise of the sea causes dead whales, that the drilling of the wind things causes dead whales.
Yeah, this was my understanding. It wasn't just an aesthetic thing that the whales didn't appreciate the wind farms. The noise of the wind farm, because I mean, my knowledge of marine life is very limited, but effectively my understanding is that they work on sonar, they work on, sound. This body, there was a 50-foot whale on Newquay's beach recently, a dead whale. This is not the first time this has happened, and they're blaming it on these other environmental measures. So what do you do, Nick?
Well, exactly. I mean, yeah, the drilling damages they're hearing, so they can't avoid ships anymore.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Tough. We all like whales. I have to agree somewhat with Andrew Tate on this. I don't agree on everything, but he did say, has a whale ever paid your rent? Which is a great point. He says, have you ever spoken to a whale? Would a whale send you a card if you had cancer? It was a good point.
No, it wasn't a good point. It's an evil point. It shows what an evil man he is. Because the fact is, we need whales. Whales are beautiful. They make our world better. It hasn't paid our rent. There's lots of things that don't pay our rent that we should keep.
I agree. Whales are beautiful. Have you seen Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home?
Yeah.
No, but I can tell you have several times.
All about whales and the beauty of whales.
When was that? That was 1980s?
Oh, I don't know, but it's Shatner and Spock.
Yeah.
OK, we're going to move on now to this next story. This is a Telegraph again. Suddenly, Rwanda doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, send asylum seekers to Orkney Islands, not Rwanda, says Lee Anderson. And this was Lee Anderson on GB News. Now, I watched the clip, and I still don't know if he was totally joking. I can't tell.
No, well, I mean, the idea isn't original to him. I mean, it was apparently floated. At the time they were talking about the Rwanda deal, they were talking about, well, why don't we put them on, you know, the extraneous islands at the far reaches of the Scotland?
Well, there was a story recently, wasn't there, that there's going to be 2 other countries other than Rwanda that weren't revealed. And I said Scotland and Wales, probably, to send people to. And Lewis had already written it down. He had the same joke. So, now it's reality. It's not a joke. Lee Anderson said he suggested it to Boris Johnson a couple of years ago, and he sort of smiled at him.
Well, they even talked about the Falkland Islands, apparently, but then they rejected that on the grounds that the locals wouldn't appreciate it. Whereas, of course, some of these islands up in the Orkneys are pretty much uninhabited, from what I understand it.
It's a ball, so it's perfect.
You know.
There are people, and those people are Norwegian ancestry. They're Vikings up there, and you wouldn't, you know, they're dangerous
I'm talking about one of those islands where it's just like, you know, two goats living there. And I feel for the goats, and the goats deserve their space.
Well, and maybe...
But you know, we do have to solve this issue. We do. But it feels a bit extreme, doesn't it, just putting people on an island? I mean, just instinctively, I don't like that.
I would say...
what's the one in the sea with Sean Connery? The Rock. Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
That was on an island.
Yeah.
That was a prison, though.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want to put these people in prison.
Point.
You know, I feel like I'm much happier with like a Premier Inn. I just feel a bit like that's a bit more humane.
They could build one on these islands.
They could build a Premier Inn on an Orkney Island. We've solved it.
You know what?
Then we can advertise it.
Of course.
At the end... It's not solving anything, and we know it's not solving anything. The only way to get people to not come is to physically stop them from coming or to make life so unpleasant in this country.
We're doing our best on that.
Yeah, with me.
With you, Lewis, that's why you're here. OK, well, we're nearing the halfway point now, but coming up, we've got Gary Lineker's latest, Macy's PC Parade, and Mizzy, the TikToker, meets justice. See you soon.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. Let's go straight to the Express. And Nick, does Gary Lineker know even less than Lewis?
Shocking. Of course, I don't condone that comment. But yeah, the headline is furious. Gary Lineker doesn't know what he's talking about. Imagine that. Over Israel comments. So our friend Gary had retweeted a video from Owen Jones featuring Raz Segal, who an Israeli-American historian. And he said it was worth 13 minutes of anyone's time. But it was it talked about Israel's military response to October 7th as textbook genocide. So, and people like Stephen Pollard, editor at large of Jewish Chronicle, has accused Lineker of universe-bending ignorance, which I liked.
No, it was Lineker's. Obviously, it was not originally Lineker's tweet. It was Owen's tweet, and then Lineker reposted it saying this is worth your time. So was he being delicate there in terms of not really commenting, just saying, why don't you watch this?
He is obviously commenting, isn't he? And he was very quiet around October 7th, as everyone noticed, but he's never quiet when Suella Braverman does something minor. I mean, so he's taking a side. And what's really interesting to me here, you've got the BBC neutrality angle and all that. What's more interesting to me is woke people finally starting to get in a bit of trouble. We've seen Susan Sarandon today with her sort of outrageous comments getting dropped by her agent. Gary Lineker's getting some flack for this because they can no longer pretend they're just good and kind. You may be on their side about Palestine, but they certainly are taking a clear side.
Yeah,
and they're actually getting into trouble finally. It was okay to attack white people and men and women, but now the line finally seems to be Jewish people. So I'm glad there is a line.
But this whole question of genocide. I mean, I watched the clip and I thought it was actually just ridiculous. I mean, the thing is, the hallmarks of genocide are groups such as Hamas who say we want to wipe out the Jews. That is a genocidal statement. The IDF going out of its way to avoid civilian casualties. I mean, by all means, you can criticise mistakes that are made, but you can't say that this is genocidal intent. What I did notice was the professor in that clip kept alluding to quotations from leading Israeli figures in the government who he says use dehumanising language about Palestinians, when in most of those cases they're talking about Hamas very specifically, and this was completely overlooked in this conversation. It was like they didn't want to admit. It was misleading. I think it was actually dishonest. So that's the problem here when you have these kind of people expressing these views. Lewis.
Yeah, well, the problem, but not the problem, is that there's 3 problems. One is he works for the BBC, and people don't like that he works for the BBC.
This is Lineker, you mean?
This is Gary Lineker. The second problem is he's doing the big switch. Maybe that's gaslighting, where he accuses the person. Genocide was used against the Jews, and he's saying now the Jews are using genocide against us. It's a flip. It just makes things so. It's trying to undercut the authority of the Jews. And the final thing is, which I forgot what it is that what the Jews are trying to do in Israel is punish the Palestinians in Gaza.
You don't think they're trying to eliminate Hamas? That's what I think they're trying to do.
I think this is, if they could go in there and kill every single Hamas person, I think there's too many Hamas people. I think what they're trying to do, and I support Israel, so don't say that I'm not supporting Israel. I support Israel. They're trying to send a message for other people.
I think they're protecting themselves. You know, unless Hamas are eliminated, then this will happen again because Hamas has said they will do this again and again. It's a self-defense issue.
But they don't have to. They don't have to.
You know, that's not this story. Do you agree with me about the Lineker part? That him sharing it is a kind of new threshold, a Rubicon that people like him are crossing on this, where they're in really dangerous territory now.
Yeah, I think you do make a good point there. I think, and I have seen some more outspoken statements from celebrities of this kind when they've made no effort to really understand the conflict.
And will the woke finally be cancelled? That's what I want to know.
Well, maybe in 10 years' time, maybe things will have flipped. This is the problem. When you set that precedent of cancellation, it'll eventually catch up to you.
Susan Sarandon losing her agent today over similar comments.
But that's in America. America has a totally different view. I don't think America has an undercurrent of anti-Semitism that this
But Nick's point is about cancel. I mean, the interesting thing is, you know, we had Owen Jones the other day talking about how he wanted to reclaim the free speech fight. All of a sudden, when you have these people who are being cancelled, for instance, university professors who are pro-Israel being cancelled, or for whatever reason, and suddenly people are coming out of the woodwork and say this is terrible because it affects their viewpoint. So I think just take a consistent view on cancellation and say let everyone say what they want, even if we don't agree. Wouldn't that be the better solution?
Yeah, I think that's actually brilliant, because the reason why we're having this problem is because the question of Israel and the Jews and the Holocaust and all these things have been totally subverted, so that people haven't been able to feel free to express themselves. So when they do, it's either shocking or it just releases a torrent of...
Yep, absolutely. OK, well, we're moving on to the Metro now. What's this one about? This is Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Often in our headlines. What's he done this time?
Well, he's a great one, Elon Musk. He pledges Twitter profits to Israel after paying pro-Hitler Holocaust denier money for being on the platform. And this is what Elon Musk is trying to make Twitter successful, by actually paying people to tweet.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he was paying this. I forget what the guy's name is, but.
Isn't this to do with the Media Matters thing? This is to do with Musk suing Media Matters because they made claims that he says were not true. Nick, you've got the more details about this.
Yeah. I mean, this thing about paying pro-Hitler Holocaust denier, the guy who was getting ad revenue like anyone on X. Musk wasn't approaching him with a brown envelope in a car park at night. So that's ludicrous. But yeah, it's kind of misleading, because I thought the original thing was to do with the response to the post which was deemed anti-Semitic, where Musk said, "You've said the actual truth," where Musk meant the ADL, and the guy in the post used the phrase Jewish communities. And so all these people boycott.
He misunderstood the tweet.
He did, but these people are saying that it's to do with this paying this guy, which is why the backlash comes, which is misleading in the Metro. Anyway, but yes, he's then sued Media Matters, but now he's also pledged profits to hospitals in Israel. He's saying X-Corp will be donating all revenue from ads.
But this is people accusing Elon Musk of anti-Semitism does strike me as ridiculous. Of course. Not least because for the past few weeks he's been talking about things like phrases like the river to the sea are anti-Semitic and he won't tolerate them on the platform. Now, that is not what an anti-Semite does. It just seems ridiculous. I think it's perfectly willing. Why do we have these ungenerous interpretations saying, oh, he was obviously meant this when he misinterpreted it?
Well, you know why, don't you? Because the establishment and woke corporations are totally against Musk ideologically and trying to destroy him. And some of them, as Nicholas DeSanto pointed out brilliantly on this show, are also his competition. There is for media attention, for eyeballs.
Well, let's move on anyway. More evidence of go work, go broke in this Mail story. Nick, what's this?
Yeah, this is a conservative fury at Macy's grows. Retailer accused of sidelining white straight men employees in DEI push. Which is, all that
is Macy's
diverse
the big
equity
shopping centre?
Yeah. What they've done is what so many people have done. They've said that they want, in this case, more ethnic diversity by 2025 with a goal of 30%, which means, of course, fewer white people. And this is a problem across the world, especially in the Western world. We've got the RAF here, the BBC and Channel 4 can advertise jobs for sort of BAME people only, etc. Chester police were successfully sued for discriminating against a straight white man. And people are finally getting sick of it. And this is the America First Legal, which is an activist group run by Stephen Miller, former Trump advisor. And they're saying we basically had enough of this, and it's barely legal. If it is legal,
but it's not legal.
Legal's the wrong phrase. But it may not be legal.
It's not legal in America. I mean, the people who are leading the case here are saying that this violates federal law. I don't think you can discriminate by skin colour when it comes to employment in America, can you?
I don't think that's been tested in corporations. That there was a test at the universities where they said universities couldn't have quotas.
Right.
So I don't know whether, I think it needs to be tested.
I mean, isn't this an example of actual systemic racism? When you have a system built in to say that white people are not going to be disadvantaged by this?
I think it does. There's a very interesting point here. When I was growing up in New York, Macy's was the store for the white people, for the Christians.
Really?
It was, yes, it was.
Did they just sell crucifixes?
No, but in my family, the Jews, we would go to Gimbel's or Bloomingdale's. We would not go to Macy's. We wouldn't be caught dead in Macy's.
Right.
Macy's sold itself as Christmas. Remember the movie about Macy's?
There's lots of films with...
Right.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it.
Home Alone?
No, but it's like...
It's a festive... Anyway, the point being...
But the point is, so when we were growing up, we wouldn't be caught dead in Macy's.
Right.
We would only go to Bloomingdale's or Gimbel's. But found out later that Macy's and Gimbel's and Bloomingdale's were all owned by Jews.
Okay, well, there we go. So you should have just gone to all of them.
It's like we were like punishing Macy's.
It's kind of like they run everything.
In that business.
Hi, guys.
All right.
Don't sue me. Yeah.
Call me old-fashioned. Why don't we just hire people on merit and ignore skin colour?
That is old-fashioned, Andrew, but hopefully it's coming back with things like this and with the Supreme Court ruling in June that ruled against these race-conscious admissions to university programmes, which were basically penalising Asian people, bizarrely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we are seeing a return to this. People are sick of this anti-white stuff because they're sick of all racism, even if it's woke, and even white people are now saying, OK, we hate white people, but not give them a break, you know what I mean? So we're going back to meritocracy.
This woke stuff also affects Asian Pacific people, you know, who have to get higher marks to get into Ivy League universities.
Well, then they started penalising them on personality because their grades were so high and they didn't want somebody to come in, so they said, OK, you've got bad personalities. OK, well, look, we've got one more section to go, so please stick around. We're going to be talking to Lewis. He's got a meat story to get his teeth into. You know he's going to love that. Nick is going to be exploring celibacy, and I'm going to be talking about super pigs. See you in a minute.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. And Lewis, we've got a story in The Guardian. Now, this is about the possible consequences of the pushback against transgender ideology, or is it? What's going on here?
Well, this is transgender deaths in U.S. on rise with increase in anti-trans laws, report shows. And this is the National Center for Transgender Equality. They're trying to show a linkage. This is one of those Carl thing, correlation. They're saying there are more anti-gay, anti-trans laws, and there are more deaths. But there's lots of other things. There's more increase in people eating spinach, and there's...
Exactly. This report makes this fatal error of suggesting causality without proof.
But it isn't a fatal error for them. It's The Guardian who are pushing the scenario of all these suicides, which is why we have to do whatever the trans community wants. Otherwise, they're going to kill themselves.
Well, this is absolutely incredible because, you know, this week we had the Trans Day of Remembrance.
Yeah.
This narrative that's being pushed that trans people are uniquely at risk isn't just factually not true. It is not backed up by any of the stats. In fact, trans people are the safest demographic of anyone in this country. They're far more less likely to be murdered than any other group of people.
Is that right?
It's absolutely true. And what they neglect to say in this article is, of course, the majority of people who are trans people who are killed are sex workers, right, or a substantial proportion of them, and that is a particularly dangerous industry, but they're disproportionately represented within that industry. So this kind of pushing this victim narrative in order to erode women's rights and gay rights is a really, I think, dangerous approach to take. You know, what is it in the UK? Roughly one trans person murdered a year is the average, which is horrible, and I don't want anyone to be murdered, but that is not an epidemic of murder against these people, and other demographics are more likely to be murdered. Why can't we just acknowledge the truth here?
Well, it's fake news, isn't it, from The Guardian? As you say, there's lifestyle factors, meaning sex work. But I mean, it'd be terrible if it was true, but it's obviously not. And this idea that it's because they say here it's because of society sending a signal about whose lives are considered important. Well, if it was that, trans people would be getting resurrected. They'd be like Benjamin Button because we're constantly told, you know, trans awareness. I believe this month is actually another trans awareness month, so it's constant.
And
so it's a complete lie.
What anti-trans legislation specifically are they talking about?
I know.
I mean, I think they're talking about wanting to protect women's own spaces and their role and their
and children and
exactly. So this is incredible. I would go so far as to say this is just a propaganda piece by The Guardian.
It's absolute outright lies. They call it a horrible storm of transphobia meeting misogyny meeting racism. I mean, come on. I mean, look, part of it is because there's this 32.9% jump in reported hate crimes based on gender identity. Well, you can report anything as a hate crime now if you want to.
And it's the perception of the person who reports it. That's what goes into the stats. Very, very weak. OK, we're going to move on, Nick, to this. What's this one? This is Mizzy, your mate.
My mate Mizzy, yeah, because he follows me on Twitter still, though I don't know who's running his Twitter now, but TikTok prankster Mizzy given 18 weeks over social media posts.
We should clarify, he's the guy who was filming crimes, walking into people's houses, intimidating people on the street for clicks, basically.
Yeah, he was. And, I'm hoping Mizzy starts to put his energy and talent in something a bit more positive, because he's now got himself in trouble again. There was a claim in the court that these were posted without his consent by a friend who had his login details, but the judge dismissed that as inconceivable, partly because he himself had been saying, hey, this is going to be posted soon, and sort of boasting about it, and because he said UK laws are weak on TV, which hasn't helped him.
But Nick, the thing about him is, he has broken the law. He's grabbing a schoolboy by the uniform, picking up people's dogs, running away with them, intimidating people on the tube, saying, do you want to die? Do you want to... I mean, just horrible behaviour, criminal behaviour, and what a shame he's getting sentenced for crime. Well, frankly, my sympathy is limited.
Well, he's done some awful stuff, Mizzy, and I felt the same as you until he followed me on Twitter, and then obviously that
changes it, doesn't it? If Jack the Ripper followed you, you'd make excuses.
He's a young lad, he's got talent. I just want him to find a different direction in life.
Yeah.
But I'm a liberal, I'm a sort of a lefty.
But hasn't he been banned from being on social media?
Well, I think he was, but I think isn't that part of the reason why he's being sentenced now?
Yes, but he should not have been banned for being on social media. That's a free speech issue.
Well, he wasn't allowed to share videos of people without consent.
No, I think a law. If you've broken the law and you filmed it, I think there's perfectly good reason for not allowing that to be on social media.
Yes, that shouldn't be on. But a blanket. There's an old saying that bad actors make good law.
No, look, and I take Nick's point about redemption, and I take the point that he's very young, and I think he can improve, and you know, I don't think this is who he'll be forever.
No, this is not that is not the. I'm interrupting you, Andrew. The question is, can a judge say to any individual, you cannot have a public voice for the next 2 years?
No, I don't think they can, but they can if you're breaking the law and putting that online.
Yes, they could say this one video is against the law because it shows you doing something wrong. But to say you can't put anything up, even wishing my mother a happy birthday.
Well, I wish they'd do it to you, Lewis, because some of your tweets are getting quite unhinged.
Yeah.
And I worry about you. Let's move on now to this story. This is actually in the Metro. This is one for you, Lewis, a beef story.
It's a beef story.
You like beef, don't you?
I love
Don't
beef.
encourage him, 'cause
I love beef. Eating beef staves off cancer, scientists discover. And what they found, this is in the Journal of Nature, which is the most prestigious and most popular science journal in the world.
So you've been vindicated.
No, I'm not vindicated at all, because there's a certain evilness in this. They're saying that there's a certain type of fatty acid called transvasenic acid, TVA, that complements clinical cancer treatments.
Yes.
So if it's like if you've got doing chemo, this could help the chemo be more effective.
So you eat beef, it's going to help your chemotherapy treatment, but you're skeptical.
That's not where it's going. It's going where they're going to try to isolate this one little component and sell this one little component to vegans because they can't get it in meat. And then it also says that clinical cancer treatments actually work, and from what I know,
they absolutely
they do not work.
Well, I've known people whose lives have been saved.
You don't know. Maybe they would have lived anyway.
Lewis is against this because it could help vegans.
Well, I think that's what it is.
That's
one reason.
Let me ask you about this beef thing, because obviously, you know, I'm never going to eat beef. I'm a vegetarian, you know.
Wrong.
And also, there's always these articles that come out every now and then saying, oh, this will kill you, that'll kill you, this will save you, that'll save you. And it's always contradictory, so I don't know what to believe.
Beef will save you, Andrew.
Is that right?
You should eat as much steak as possible. Obviously, it's good for you. It's what we've always eaten. Vegetables are bad for you. They're a poison. That's the kind of thing Lewis would say, but he's probably right. You should not be a vegetarian.
But historically...
You're only doing it because you're a big lefty.
Historically, though, Nick, in the history of humanity, we eat much more meat than we ever did, than our ancestors ever did.
No, that is not true.
Of course it's true.
No, that is completely...
You go back to Elizabethan England, they couldn't afford this much meat. Meat was expensive.
And those people were of ill health. We're talking about...
They were only eating meat.
They were only eating meat.
When we were cave people...
Not even cave people.
Tyrannosaurus Rexes over their head.
Meat.
We haven't had a grain-based diet. The first people to have a grain-based diet were the Egyptians.
Okay, well, look.
And they died of they had tremendous heart disease.
Okay, well, let's move on. We don't have much time, so let's have a look at the super pig story. Nick, have you got this one?
Really? We don't get to do the Toyota? All right, let me find the super pigs. It's like one of the worst ones. But all right, in mass breeding super pigs set to cross into US, a world's most invasive animal. That's just a picture of me. That's not the super pig, I should stress.
No one was
that's
implying
that. The whole story. I know, but I was thinking the thing was going to come up, but they just stayed on me. But,
okay, so
it's about immigration. It's basically what it is.
So it's but these feral pigs in Canada, and they're worried that they're going to storm over the border into America. It's not like this is ridiculous, isn't it, Lewis?
It is one of those. I mean, you don't understand what America's like. It's got every single day. It's got a story like that about the horrible people coming into the country.
It is just preposterous. And since we don't have much time, we're going to move straight on to this final story, which is about Stevie Wonder. Nick, what's this?
Yeah, this is Stevie Wonder took me joyriding, and it's the guy from the Eurythmics, Dave Stewart, and he went joyriding with Stevie Wonder. Now, I wouldn't go joyriding with Stevie Wonder, you know, that's why I'm like very superstitious. That was my joke. I told it to you guys earlier, which is why I couldn't sell it again now. But in the break, that killed, guys. I just want to say.
I think it's a very good joke, Nick, but the thing is, so basically, apparently, I didn't know Stevie Wonder did the harmonica solo from There Must Be an Angel, the Eurythmics song, and to celebrate, he did it in one take, and after they went joyriding in a car park.
Doing donuts in a car park.
The man's blind.
Yeah. But it's probably this is America, it's probably a very large car park.
And it didn't matter that it was at night, because he's blind.
And they were telling him, go left, go right, go left, go right.
I still think it's absolutely terrifying. Blind people, don't drive. That's just my tip. Anyway, the show is nearly over. Let's take another look at Thursday's front pages. So the Daily Mail is leading with, let's hope it's just the start. That's their comment on the autumn statement. The Telegraph has biggest tax cuts since the 1980s. The Sun, New Year's wear hay. The I News, same story, tax burden to hit record high. The Guardian has Hunt reveals 20 billion in tax cuts. And the Daily Star is that Stevie Wonder story. That's all we've got time for. Thanks so much to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. I'm going to be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Leo Kearse and Josh Howie. But if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat at the moment of Headliners, then please do stick around, because now it is time for breakfast.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Farage, hosted by me tonight, Christopher Hope. Tonight I'll be joined by the GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, and Reform UK leader, Richard Tice. Of course, tonight the big story is only one in town, the autumn statement. As national insurance is cut, the living wage rises and a tax rate for businesses is made permanent, it's all being overshadowed as the overall tax burden is set to reach